the economic status of this country is not really doing very well, and it affects every person, and so it affects the universities. And it's very important for us to like, on the flip side, when we were discussing with you before we came on air, we say that in as much as there are things that we really need to have a conversation over. In as much as we are talking about the university's fund proposal, raising the fee, or proposing to have the fee raised from, I think, 16,000 to about 50,000, thereabout. In as much as we really want to complain about it generally, there are things that we also need to ask ourselves. The setup for such fees was, I think it was a recommendation of 1989. So over the years, 1989, we're talking about 34 years down the line, the very same amount has been, the allocation per student over the years, 16,000. It really doesn't make sense that with the economic status, the 16,000 of 1989 is not, it's actually like 6,000 or even 3,000 in this very era if you go on ratio basis. And that recommendation, it's a discussion that we really need to have. But again, on the flip side, there are things that we also need to ask ourselves. That our universities, what are they really teaching? Like, the universities have become so hard on self-reliance, like it's almost becoming impossible to be self-reliant, that we really got to depend on the exchequer for us to survive, that we depend on exchequer to still pay overheads and stuff like that over the years, and yet you're producing graduates, really. There are things that we really need to discuss. It's maybe wrong priorities, wrong choice of heads of the institutions. I was in Rwanda, Kigali, the other day, actually last week, and I found, was it Kenyatta University's building, in Kigali, that was bought by taxpayers' money, using billions and billions of money, that is not in use. And same to, there is another university that has got I think in Nairobi University, a building in Uganda. There is one that has got some hotel in an abandoned hotel in Mombasa. You can imagine what are we really doing wrong as a country? Because here, the economy is not really doing very right. So clearly, our lecturers and staff and everything and growth of universities is becoming a challenge. But still, we are setting the cap of universities fund at 16,000. Even with the growth of students per year, because then the number of students in 1989 is not commensurate with the number of students in this time and era. So that is a discussion that we really need to have. But do we really need to depend entirely on the exchequer? Entirely, that we've got to depend on the exchequer for us to survive. And that is why universities like Egerton are going down. Because of such discussions, we've really not thought of reviewing such. Is it about time that we think about, fee increment? Is it about time? So such discussions, those are the things that we also need to ask ourselves.
But let me
close down some universities that do not really make economic value in terms of, they can't really think. There are times, when I was growing up, I used to imagine Egerton University, for example, they used to be well known in agriculture and matters, farming and stuff like that. Why are they not producing? Why can't they feed? Universities in some developed countries feed the nation through their technology, but this we don't do.
So let me ask you a question. Yes, there are those challenges, but in the education sector, the primary education, free primary education. Secondary education, it is subsidized, 22,000 per learner in public institutions. You get to the university, at the moment there's a bit of support. I think it's about 8,000 or so, if I'm not mistaken.
16,000 capitation.
Capitation, right. So when you start now increasing the fees and pushing that burden to the parent or the student, how are they supposed to meet their needs at a time that you also know that 200,000 learners of KCSE 2022 have not been able to join school for the same reason, school fees?
No, it's a discussion that we need to have, work on the capitation increase, and then have a basic conversation. Because, Sam, you can't be working here at the Royal Media Services over the years and there is no salary increase, even 1,000 shillings. So even as you seek your salary increase, there is what we call, like I hear my speaker likes saying, noblesse oblige. That is my speaker, Moses Etangula. That even as we discuss that, you don't just look at your benefits alone, also look at the value of, beyond your benefits, how are you leaving the university? You know, what status do you leave your university at by the time you are exiting? So the economic status of the country is you see, we also need to appreciate where we've come from in the education sector. That now, there is an element of subsidy on secondary, that you give 22,000 if it's national school, the government pays 22,000 and you pay some amount of money. So at least we've come of age, that we are growing gradually to the level where education will be entirely free. Yes. But the university is left as it is. If its capitation is as it is, if it's the fees is as it is, then you still want to produce quality education, you still want to lecturers to, you know, to have quality in terms of their service delivery. You still want them paid high. You see them striking left, right, and center when they are not paid as they want. You want the salary, I mean, the fee to remain the same. Really, it doesn't make sense. It's a conversation. I'm not really saying that we entirely go to that direction, but we really need to have that conversation. Is it really viable to have the same amount that people were paying in the 80s, still paid in the...
Okay.